Hello and welcome to another Barry Hawkins Live with your host, none other than Barry Hawkins himself. That's right, we're continuing in our series on effective development process, and tonight we continue our journey through the subchapter of effective development process artifacts. The artifact in question tonight, task boards. How do they work? There are few artifacts and topics as subject to personal and team preference as task boards. And we're going to be diving into sorting through the preference and the dogma and the religiosity to what is a task board supposed to do, period. Because the intended outcome and the intended purpose of the artifact should be our utmost guiding principle in deciding what we do with that artifact, how we craft it, how we curate it, how we use it. So let's get started. All right, so the task board. The task board is one of two artifacts that are referred to as highly visible information emitters. That is, they are meant to be large, very visible artifacts in the physical proximity, we'll get to that in a minute, physical proximity of the team, so that it's very easy to see what's on the task board and the current state of it. Now, what is on the task board? The task board is meant to hold the outcomes, predominantly user stories, though it doesn't have to only be user stories, the outcomes that the team has pulled into the current development cycle, sprint if it's Scrum, development cycle if it's anything else, and the visualization of the outcomes and then the tasks that are associated with those outcomes. It gives us the picture of the cycle as it's beginning and then as it progresses day over day, so that we have better interaction, conversation, visibility, and context for clarifying questions in the team as we go. Now, what are some key factors and guiding principles to consider when creating, curating, evolving your team's task board? One, bear in mind that the intent of the task board is to visualize the batch of work in progress for batch development processes like Scrum, XP, etc. You want to be able to see the batch as you've pulled it in, as it's progressing day over day, and be able to see how that's all going. Take, for example, this picture here. So here you see a team's task board. This is a physical task board, and it's right after sprint planning or cycle planning has happened. So all of the outcomes are in the large white cards, and then all of the tasks that go into implementing those outcomes are in the smaller square post-its. This team here is using the one of my favorite conventions, the color-coded per functional discipline task cards. So it's very clear to see what tasks go into the outcomes that we're trying to accomplish, and what functional disciplines are involved in delivering each of those outcomes. And so that's a great visualization, as you're going, as things are getting started, kicking off, and also as it progresses, because the goal is to visualize the batch in progress. The things that you complete are no longer in progress. And if you want to have the clearest pictures, and especially for teams who have more stories than can fit on their physical task board, it's often beneficial to move the completed items off of the board so that you have greater visibility on the ones that are farther down. In this example here, so here's a team. This looks like a team for whom the sprint or development cycle has just started. But if you look along the top there, the top of that aluminum frame of the task board, you'll see that there are some stories with their task post-its all stacked on top of one another, and they're pulled off of the board. This is actually a team whose development cycle is in progress, and they've taken the completed things off, pulled the next things up, and are moving everything up so that they have visibility. So it's almost since this is largely about software product development, it's like a stack, right? It's like a stack, and popping items off the stack so that the stack moves higher, and then you can see the things that are further down. It's similar concept. So a highly visible artifact that's visualizing what you've pulled into the batch, and even as the batch progresses, ensuring the focus on the things that are in progress and still to be done, which I've found to be particularly handy and useful over the years. What is going on with overlays tonight? Sorry, guys. No, it's not demos, though. That's hilarious. Sorry, gang. We were there. One of the fun bits of live streaming is when it just goes haywire. I do not know. Apologies as I try to figure out what the broadcast software has decided is important. All right. Now that that's over, on to the second point, which is a design principle of the effective task board is it also, an effective task board will reinforce the relationship between tasks and the outcomes that they support. You want to avoid, this is a super common thing with most digital task boards, a thing that I call task myopia, where you come to the daily stand-up or you're looking at a team's board and there's just a focus on who's working on what task, not how that task relates to the outcomes that need to be delivered. And so a daily stand-up of that nature tends to go something like this. Someone has a filter where basically as you go around to each team member, the view on the board snaps to just the subtasks that person's working on right now. And that person will talk about their subtasks or subtasks in Jira, their tasks. Then they'll jump to the next person. They're talking about their tasks, next person tasks. And you come away from a daily stand-up like that, still wondering, okay, I know everybody's working on stuff, but what's done? Is anything done right now? And how are we doing just with the overall batch of work? Does it all look like it's going to complete, or might it not? I don't know. And that's what happens when you have task myopia. So you want to, again, a key thing, visualize on the task board, visualize the overall batch of work, ensure that the relationship of tasks to outcomes is clear. And that's most clear when you see the tasks and their outcomes all together. To me, one coaching heuristic or rule of thumb that I've used with team members who aren't comfortable looking at the overall thing and saying, well, I'm working on this, it's part of that, is to think of when you have a task board that's designed as intended, have the individual team members think of the tasks, the items that are related to the outcome, thinking of those tasks as their speaker's notes for the daily stand-up. So they're, which task did you work on today or yesterday? Which task are you working on today? Or if the task you were working on yesterday is still the one you're working on, then just say, I was working on this and here's what I'm going to do on it today. Super simple, right? It helps them, it helps your less outgoing team members know how to use the task board to their advantage in conveying to the rest of the team, this was the progress I made yesterday. This is what I intend to do today. This is my plan of attack for today. And the litmus test for a team in whether or not their task board is working for them is at the end of a daily stand-up, do we all know what one another's working on? And do we know how things look overall in terms of how we're going to do in delivering the batch of work that we completed to, or whether we need to make any adjustments to that. If you end a daily stand-up and then you have people asking, now what were they doing, or what was I supposed to pick up from them? That's a sign that your task board is probably not helping you have that holistic picture and helping you connect the dots between what your team members need to work on, focus on, hand off to one another, collaborate on together to keep things moving. All right. The last key principle in this installment for an effective task board is an effective task board should help you control the flow of work. That is, as you know, you're starting on your most important outcomes, working on those, getting those completed before jumping down to other ones. The board should help reinforce that. It should help you see, are we, focusing on the top outcomes, getting them done before moving to the next ones, or are we hopping all over the place and we need to stop that and get better at it? An example of using your task board to control the flow is this picture here. So this is a development cycle that's in flight, and you can see that most of the in-flight and things that are ready for acceptance, what have you, they're toward the top of the board. Things being worked on are on the top of the board, and they're not hopping down and pulling things into progress that are the bottom 2/3 of the cycle. They're getting the top things completed before jumping down there. And it's important for a task board to help you see this picture. It's important for team members to understand this picture, because if team members are pulling things out into work in progress on stories way farther down, then they're going to be bouncing between what they're supposed to do on the current stories in flight and things that they're pulling out prematurely. And that leads to excessive context switching. It can lead to delays. But the most impactful thing that not being focused on controlling the flow of items across the task board tends to result in is what I call downstream dumping. And with downstream dumping, so let's say in this example, let's say that people did start pulling things out and moving them to in progress, and the next thing you know, almost every story has some number of tasks in progress. Nothing's done, but a lot of stuff in progress. That all will stay that way. Let's say if you've got a 2-week sprint or 10 business day sprint or development cycle. What I've typically seen when teams do too much of that is it all is in progress until usually the second to last day of the cycle. And on the second to last day of the cycle, suddenly everything moves from in progress to acceptance or QA, review. And then all of the upstream people, usually and it's usually the engineering team members doing the coding, they hand it to QA and to UX for user acceptance testing or usability reviews, and say, all right, there you go, get it done. Well, the problem here is you've just taken 2 weeks worth of work that's been being done by all of the upstream people, and you've dumped it onto the downstream people and have said, so you planned your part of this work to be over the course of 2 weeks. You now have 48 hours. Good luck. Don't cut the blue wire. And that's awful, right? That creates a dilemma for the people that are in those downstream groups to say, well, do I just give all this a quick once over and hope it all works out? Or do I actually say what I really think, which is we cannot responsibly test and regress all of this work in 48 consecutive hours. And so a lot of this stuff's going to carry over. That's an awful position to put your teammates in. So use your task boards to control that flow of work. Keep it going evenly from top to bottom across the board, because again, the board represents your cycle, and a smoother flowing cycle tends to set a team up for greater effectiveness in delivering the outcomes that they commit to. All right, let us see what is in store for us in the questions submissions today. Not necessarily a question per se, but I will say that yes, John Mayer, Mercury is definitely in retrograde based on the experience I just had working with overlays live in real time. So, agreed. And happy Thursday. All right, so let's see. Here's one. I have a remote team member. What am I supposed to do about that? Well, and you can see that most of my dialogue and examples have centered on physical task boards. And I say, my general guidance is, whenever possible, whenever you have a co-located or mostly co-located team, do try using a physical task board. There's something about having that large physical artifact right there next to your team, and at the daily stand-up, actually, touching and moving things, that really reinforces for the team the commitment that they've made together to complete a batch of work. Now I will say, I've almost never had completely co-located teams. I'm talking pre-pandemic, pre-work from home. I've always had at least one, usually two, sometimes three members in an 8, 12 person team who are remote. And we've done a number of solutions, but I will say that for teams that have had a partially not co-located team, partially distributed team, the benefit of having the physical task board was such that they came up with ways to still use the physical task board and incorporate the remote members in the daily stand-up, in the update and moving of tasks. It often involved video conferencing before we all had to live on it. And there were, I've had some teams where there was a tablet or a dedicated laptop that was a video conferencing laptop for the stand-up, and the remote members, basically someone would hold, everyone who was physically there would do their stand-up, and then someone would hold the tablet or laptop that had the remote person there, and they would give their update. Many stories I could regale on it. It's interesting to see a team work around constraints when they're getting the value and understanding the purpose of the artifact and the interaction that they're undertaking. So if you just have a team member, then I would say experiment with ways of working with a physical task board and incorporating and including that member. If you have a mostly or completely distributed team, then that's when you would go to look at a digital task board. And I'll touch on that more in a bit. Okay, we have. What do you do when a team member wants to skip down to something lower? Just having talked about the controlling the flow of work, this is a responsibility of the team steward to ensure that people aren't jumping down and to ask why. I found it very effective to ask, well, is there a reason that you want to jump, you want to jump down on that instead of continuing to work on the task that you're working on for the top priority story? And I will often find that the person working on that task will say, well, I got stuck. And this is crucial. And this is one of the key purposes of daily stand-ups and task boards. We want to surface when someone's getting stuck. Not to shame them, not to make them feel bad, but just to surface, this person may need help getting unstuck, and see if a team member can pair with them and help get them unstuck. Because you want to know when someone's stuck and help them get unstuck, rather than have them just stop work, jump down and start something that nobody else is ready to pull in progress, because now they're running ahead of everyone else down here while this critical work's not happening on a story that everyone is focused on, that is of a higher priority. So when someone wants to skip down lower, ask why, seek to clarify, and see if it's simply that they need help getting unstuck. It may be that someone needs to pair with them. It may be that they need the team steward or the product steward to go and meet with legal or marketing and get that answer they've been waiting on for 2 days now, because that's going to help them finish their task. It could be a number of things, but at the end of the day, explore and pursue clarification. Try to continue to control the flow of work so that the highest priority is completing first and minimizing work in progress, ensuring a smoother flow of outcomes across the task board. Alrighty. How do you keep an eye on who's doing what with physical task boards? So this is a question I get a lot with for folks who are used to using only project management software and no physical artifacts. I'm often asked, well, I'm used to assigning tickets or assigning tasks or subtasks to people. How am I going to know who's doing what? Well, on a physical task board, it's actually quite simple. The convention that I learned many years ago and have been using ever since is when someone picks up a task and pulls it to in progress, they put their initials on it. And as a team steward, I usually will come to the task board a couple of minutes before the daily stand-up and actually look and see, do I have any given individual's initials on more than one thing, on 2 or more things that are in progress? Because if so, I'm going to ask them, okay, pick one, put the rest of these back, because you're not working on all 3 of these at the same time. Finish that one, then you can go to another one. So using initials, and if there's a task that's started by one person and needs to be handed off to another, then you just cross out those initials, and the next person, the person who takes it over or to whom it's handed off, they put their initials on. Super straightforward. It's very lightweight, and I've generally found that very effective when using a physical task board. You can see that a lot of questions are coming up about physical tasks. I will say that also applies to digital task boards that are made using collaboration tools like Miro and Lucidchart, which I didn't have time to throw together an example, but I will say, if you are a team who's a former fan of your physical task board, but now you're all work from home and you can't use it, experiment with drawing your old physical task board in Miro or Lucidchart or another application and collaborate and update tasks that way, because you get that spirit of, lightweight, yet focusing, highly, visible information emitter type artifact without all of the heavy, sometimes burdensome weight of trying to use your, Jira, Rally, what have you, to have the same effect that you used to have with your physical task board. So yeah, look forward to the comments and questions on that statement. Right, then this is a good one. And I've gotten this question a lot over more than a decade. And so I appreciate the courage and candor in this question. Why do you, meaning me, why do you have such an aversion to digital task boards? I have historically not favored digital task boards because most of the ones that I have seen and experienced work against the kind of interaction between people that a task board is intended to provide. Both in planning a sprint and in daily stand-ups, in looking, looking at the work, the state of it in progress. So many of the agile development, really project management tools that are branded as agile development tools, they really have their roots in classical project management. Truly show when you look at collaboration artifacts like a task board, because they tend to have a focus on single person assignment, single person accountability, highlighting or focusing on updates of tasks, but not their relation to outcomes. I think the time of the global pandemic and work from home has been a really interesting time. While it's had a lot of awful impact, there have been some interesting developments in the space of remote and online collaboration. I've seen super exciting experiments, and even like beyond experiments that turned into adoptions of using Miro for physical digital task boards. That does not roll off the tongue, but basically replicating the kind of lightweight artifact that we had with physical task boards in a digital medium, so that we can all collaborate on it despite not being together. I've had the most results and promise with Miro. I've had some decent success with Lucidchart. I haven't done too much with other tools. I feel like the weight of Miro's drawing and commenting and collaboration is a nice balance between effective diagramming and lightweight collaboration, so that you're not drawing, so it doesn't feel like you're drawing your sprint tasks in a UML tool. Yeah, that is why I have not liked them. I'm reminded of, I was at a client giving some training years ago, and this client, they had engaged both myself and a colleague of mine, Joe Nuxall, to support them for different reasons. But I was giving training, and Joe dropped into a class that I was giving, and I love Joe to death. He's just a very dynamic and fascinating person, and but also he'll say whatever he's thinking. And I was in the middle of getting through this training, and he just walks in and just sits down. He's like, "Don't mind," to everybody, like, "Don't mind me. I'm just here to watch, and we know each other. It's all good." And I got to the part about boards, task boards, and talking about physical task boards. And Joe got up. He's like, "Let me speak about this particular topic," and I didn't know what was going to happen, because Joe is brilliant at UX and design. He worked at Apple for a number of years. Tesla. He's done a lot of really fascinating things. So I thought, oh gosh, he's about to totally shoot down the everything I'm saying right now. But as he began talking, he was talking about his experience of using and adapting Scrum at Apple on the web team, and he said, actually we chose to use and stick with physical task boards because it was the medium that provided the interaction that we were looking for in talking about the work that we had committed to together. And it was just one of those, it stands out to me to this day, because it was just a very unexpected and candid, random example of a very experienced and seasoned person in both teams interacting effectively together and pushing the envelope of digital experience, weighing in on this years long and often hotly debated topic. So task boards, make sure that they're giving your team and the people who interact and collaborate with your team an accurate picture of the batch of work as you begin the cycle and as you progress through the cycle, so that day over day, everyone knows right where things are at and how to optimize their handoffs and interactions with one another to minimize delay, surface the need for clarification and unblocking. And if it's doing that for you, you are you're doing pretty well. John Mayer shares, MS Whiteboard works well for MS Teams. I'm going to have to check that out. Thank you for that recommendations. I actually have something to play with now over the next few weeks. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is Barry Hawkins Live Effective Task Boards. Thank you for joining and tuning in. We'll continue looking at the key artifacts of effective development process in upcoming episodes. As always, if you find value or mild entertainment in these episodes, please do like and subscribe. We would love for you to know what's coming up and when you can consume that, whether offline after things are live, or if you're able to join us live in person. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great balance of your week, and we will see you in the next episode. Take care.